One of the best things that I think that leaders and managers can do right now is to communicate a lot. People want to hear from leaders, they want to hear from managers. There's a lot going on in the world, and communication is key for making sure that people are all on the same page about the message. I think it's also very important to be understanding and flexible right now. A lot of people are going through situations that they never thought they would be going through in their entire lives. And so the best that we can do is bring a lot of empathy into that situation. And then finally, I think asking for input from the team is really key. We might think that people need and want one thing, and they might want something completely different. And that thing might change over time. So I think asking for input and getting a lot of feedback regularly is one of the best things that can be done.
Leaders and managers can achieve a meaningful balance by practicing empathy. If they step into the shoes of their employees and colleagues and start to understand each person's perspective and experience, they can gather the information they need to refine their messaging and communicate appropriately with each individual and the group as a whole. With an empathetic approach, they can recognize different employees' points of view in home situations or challenges they have working on the front line. Managers be better equipped to gauge how employees are reacting to their work conditions, how well they're able to accomplish their tasks, as well as handling personal obligations like juggling healthcare or tending to a parent who might be isolated, and making sure they can get outside, take a break and get some exercise, escaping from the confines of their home. Each person is better messaged and supported slightly differently. And empathy helps supervisors check in at the right frequency, see who might need additional technical support or a boost to meet their deadline. First of all, some people are just not great at working from home. It's just not their thing. Under normal conditions, they would probably opt for some other type of workplace flexibility rather than working remotely. They might consider flexible hours instead. It could be the buzz of the office they love, or being able to brainstorm easily with colleagues, or because they get really distracted by things they haven't done at home, like the washing or mending a dripping tap. So some people are more challenged than others to focus and get their work done at home. So the solution here is to help these people find their optimal work setting. In fact, that's helpful for everyone, but particularly these people, so that they're able to set themselves up for success. Whether it could be fixing the leaky tap at the weekend, setting up a focused workspace far away from the washing machine, or scheduling brainstorming sessions with many different team members. There are ways to mitigate different elements that could be reducing any particular employee's productivity.
Some of the biggest challenges for working from home right now that we're seeing is burnout from too many calls. People are jumping on calls constantly, and calls can be really draining, especially video calls, because you have to make sure that you are present and that you look aware and present in the video call as well. And so those can be really draining. So I think burnout from too many calls has been a really big one that we've seen. And then I think just if you see these sorts of things, changing things up, maybe things can be done asynchronously and they don't need to be synchronous on a video call, or maybe it can be an audio call instead of a video call, and just video calls for catch-ups or fun things like that.
The number one challenge that I run into both leading and being part of remote teams is transparency, and really understanding what level of transparency is needed for the organization. One super tangible example of where this becomes real for us is with things like feedback. Specifically, when is feedback private and when is feedback public? Because you want to make sure that obviously the person getting the feedback is learning and that's constructive, but you also don't want to lose that feedback for the rest of your organization. So one clear, tangible example that we have and a rule that we follow is that personal development feedback, or is that working team-wise feedback? So for example, if you're working on copy, that will always be very constructive, objective feedback that the whole working team needs. If it's feedback related to maybe how you deliver feedback or things that you are doing personally, then that will always be one-on-one, not public feedback. So the number one challenge that I've always faced is transparency. Like we talked about before, the way to get around that is clear rules and being upfront. And one tangible example, if you're looking for where this can go off the rails, that I've experienced is feedback.
Trust is another challenge for employees working from home. Many managers have resisted flexible working policies because they think team members will slack off if they can't see them. In my experience, someone who's a slacker, they have that attitude wherever they are working. The problem is that when people feel that there is a lack of trust, it really can undermine their productivity. The solution here is to focus managers on results, which holds each employee accountable, but allows them the flexibility to get their work done in the way that suits them best. And this is important when there are many non-typical home-based obligations that the families are having to deal with right now during the working day. The solution here is to focus managers on results, which holds each employee accountable, but also allows them the flexibility to get the work done in the way that suits them best. And this is all the more important when there are many atypical home-based obligations that employees are having to manage during each working day. Don't forget to recognize and reward employees. It could be a shout out on a team call, or through a group email or a personal email. Maybe you buy them a gift card that they can spend online. Every morale booster is important. And generally do extra check-ins right now because personal and family circumstances can be very difficult and may be changing for the worse or better over time.
One of my best tips for boosting productivity and maintaining concentration while working from home is to use Brain FM and then pairing that with the Pomodoro technique. So I'll put Brain FM on their focus channel, which is awesome for me. And then I will focus on something for 20 or 30 minutes and then take a break immediately afterwards. This works for me every time, especially if I'm trying to get to a task that I have been avoiding for days or weeks.
My tip is to focus on having an inclusive culture. Corporate culture matters, whatever the situation, but is all the more important when everyone is scattered across many locations. Each isolated employee still needs to feel part of the corporate community, and emphasizing inclusion helps them feel that they belong, that they can feel safe. If they feel included, and if data is shared with them so they have everything they need to get their work done, they'll be able to focus on their task and not be distracted, thinking they might be missing out on something or being excluded for an important call. They can rest assured, I'm in the loop, and I'm part of the team wherever I am. And we're in this together, because hope and a common positive vision is important to inspire, rally, and motivate everyone, especially when they're dispersed. And what's more, with that sense of connection, trust builds, and that allows employees to speak up more easily and share their ideas, so collaboration improves as well.
So for me, it's just being upfront, and specifically upfront about how I like to work and when I like to work. Every team I go into, whether I'm leading or I'm part of, I make sure they understand two things. The first is that how I like to work is a very, very delicate balance of synchronous and asynchronous. I treasure my asynchronous times because I can't multitask. If I'm emailing and someone's asking me feedback on a forum, I can't do both. I can't context switch. And so I make sure that they understand that, hey, if I'm focusing on this, I can't jump into that. And I think that's where digital remote tools are incredible over the office. The second thing, in terms of when I work, I'm very, very, very intentional with my calendar. In fact, I fight my calendar every Sunday in terms of making sure I have the amount of hours that I need to get really, really deep, intensive work done. And I think one thing that actually is crazy to me that we're starting to see is this anti-meeting sentiment. Like, I feel like we just kind of blanketed, like used a very binary logic of, no, meetings are bad. When in reality, meetings can be phenomenal so long as they are in alignment with how your team wants to work and when they work. So yeah, that's my huge tip, is just be super upfront and make sure everyone knows how and when you like to work.
Well, I'm very purposeful now about having a regular schedule every workday, but one that also allows me flexibility depending on what I need to get done. I put on comfy work clothes as I'm sitting for hours, and over breakfast, I allocate reading time, not just to catch up on news, but also check in with friends, exchange some funny videos and jokes. And this balance of content, I feel, is really important for my sanity and to start the day off on a good note. I have very deliberately arranged things so that my kids and I each have a dedicated place to work or study, as well as sort of relax so that we don't disturb or crowd each other too much. Then we all come together at the end of the day to make and have dinner together and hang out for a bit. Truth be told, I don't like jogging, but I'm now doing some because it's a good chance to get out and get some fresh air. I do exercise every day, otherwise I wouldn't be able to sleep properly.
I think there are a lot of positives to working from home, and one of the biggest ones that I've seen is that you were able to capitalize on when you are most energized and when you feel you can get the most work done. For me, that's in the morning, and if I were to be spending the morning commuting, spending 30 minutes or an hour in the car on the way somewhere, I think a lot of that energy will be drained by the time I get there. Instead, I can do my best work in the morning, and then I can do more relaxing things in the afternoon when I know I'm going to have a little bit less energy.
There's tons of benefits, but there's three that stick out to me: personalization, speed, and access to global talent. With personalization, we heavily leverage communication, project management, and file storage tools. Now, there's not one tool. Like, we can't just say, hey, go Slack, go Trello, go Jira, go G Suite, go Microsoft Teams. In fact, there's great tools for every single purpose. Where it's really been important for us is understanding why we're using specific tools and then configuring and integrating those to best help our teams. And it totally depends on the environments you're in. In terms of speed, I've seen some incredible things. In terms of, with Microsoft, we were able to build and bring to market our solution in under a year. And in part of that, I was actually remote 90% of the time. Now, the last one, in terms of access to global talent, this is where I've seen the biggest delta in terms of the difference between being stuck to one city and having global access to talent. The deeper insight is that when leveraging heavily remote workforce, you're able to get access to people that you wouldn't even think are shining stars. So one specific example was one of our project managers, who's been one of the best project managers I've ever worked with. She was a VP at a software company, left the software company to raise her children. When she went back into the workforce, they told her, you'll never be where you were. And so she said, that's okay. I'll do what I love. I'll be an editor, and then I'll be a project manager. And so that's the three benefits that have been crucial for me, have been the personalization with these tools, the speed, and the access to global talent.
I think there are a lot of positives to working from home, and one of the biggest ones that I've seen is that you were able to capitalize on when you are most energized and when you feel you can get the most work done. For me, that's in the morning, and if I were to be spending the morning commuting, spending 30 minutes or an hour in the car on the way somewhere, I think a lot of that energy will be drained by the time I get there. Instead, I can do my best work in the morning, and then I can do more relaxing things in the afternoon when I know I'm going to have a little bit less energy.